My name is Tony Perrotta. I'm the president and founder of Greentec. We specialize in IT asset disposition and e-waste processing. We're based out of Cambridge, Ontario. We've been in business for just over 26 years, going on our 27th year now. We also certified by R2. We're waiting for R2 V3, the latest version of R2 certification. And we also have the NAID, National Association for Information Destruction certifications for both wiping and for destruction, physical destruction. So we would do like a certified wipe. We would bring it in, we would certify all that the information's been wiped from the device. We do a complete diagnostics on the device. So we would wipe, test all the functions of the devices and ensure that it meets a certain standard. And if it does, then that device would probably get refurbished and resold. If it's end of life, where it cannot be reused, then either because the client doesn't want it to be reused or because it's just too old, for example. And at that point, we would break it down and we would probably recover some components and parts if there's any value to them, like the CPU, processor, maybe the memory. Sometimes the hard drive, we can wipe those too. But if it's like certified end-of-life destruction, then we would basically physically destroy the entire device. We have a complete shredder line here where we would dehazardize the device first. So we would remove the batteries, and often enough, like on a desktop computer, even a laptop computer, there's embedded batteries, these little button cell batteries. So we would have to basically take the device apart, pull out those batteries, and then we would be able to shred that entire device and recover the fractions, the shredded fractions. We have a separator system where we would separate, all copper bearing material, aluminum, plastic, and steel, ferrous metals. So those are what you just mentioned there, R2 and eSteward. They're basically industry certifications. They're industry standards, right? So in order to have that certification, you have to meet a subset of industry standards. And those standards are broken up by, for example, I'll speak to R2 because that's what we are. We're R2 certified. So R2 has a set of standards for environmental compliance, health and safety, and for data and data destruction. So for example, like, it would ensure that you'd have the proper permits to operate and do what you do. It would ensure that you have the proper systems in place, that you have a good risk assessment and risk management system in place to make sure that your employees are not exposed to either physical hazards or environmental hazards or health and safety hazards, for example. Because when you get into processing end-of-life electronics, there's a lot of hazards you have to be aware of, right? You have the lithium-ion batteries, you have the toner cartridges that are in printers, you've got mercury backlighting that's in the LCD displays. We've done as far as urine samples and blood samples from our employees to make sure that they're not being exposed to any of these hazardous components and materials, and that we operate a safe work environment. Let's take the case of a laptop, for example. Let's say the whole laptop device is not reusable. Maybe the screen is reusable, right? There's screens that are needed for spare parts. There's the keyboards. On a laptop, you also have the processor, the memory, the hard drives. All those components can be reused. And sometimes, even if they're embedded, there's CPUs that are embedded right into the board. Sometimes you can actually cut those CPUs out and you can harvest those CPUs for reuse. So there are quite a few components that can be harvested from laptops, desktops, and from mobile devices. Well, fires. Fires is the first one. You hear about fires all the time. You see these recycling plants catching fire here, there, everywhere. We had a massive one that caught fire here in our town. Same thing, lithium-ion battery got through, right? So that's something that some people need to be aware, is that these lithium-ion batteries are very powerful. Lithium-ion batteries can swell up if they're not stored properly. You need to ensure that when you're removing it, the contacts aren't exposed. You're taping the contacts. You're storing it in a UN-rated container. We had that scare a few years ago with the Samsung notebook. Remember, it would catch fire. That was a defect in the battery, but that does happen quite often. Is the big risk is for fire, and as it smolders, it creates a whole other type of environmental risk. You're putting it out with water or whatever it may be. That water gets contaminated, ends up into our groundwater. The waste creates carbon, right? And if you can extend the use of a device, you're really saving a lot of carbon, because you don't have to mine that material to make, mine the gold, mine the plastics, mine the silver, the copper, the aluminum, all these metals that are needed to make these devices, right? They have a pretty huge environmental impact on GHG, on greenhouse gas effect. So that's something that we all should be mindful of, because really it all boils down to the way we behave as a society and what we do at end of life, how we handle our waste. In fact, why would you even put it in your landfill? Because a lot of this material is reusable, right? It's recoverable. The old sayings always apply today. One man's trash is another man's gold, right? The good thing about what we do is that there's a lot of value in what we recover, whether it's a reusable device or we recover the metals. Has not only it's not only good for you or good for us, but it's also good for our world and our planet, right? That's really the message that I think is kind of captures it all for me, and I think it's something that would be good, would benefit everyone.